A rookie Hell's Angel dated a rich businesswoman to pay his brother's surgery. What happened next would change everything they believed about love, sacrifice, and the true meaning of brotherhood. The morning sun crept over the dusty horizon of Bakersfield, California, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. Marcus Hayes stood outside the modest trailer he shared with his younger brother, Danny, watching the light spread across the worn landscape. At 26 years old, Marcus had already lived several lifetimes' worth of hardship, but nothing had prepared him for the weight that now pressed against his chest like an iron fist. 6 months ago, Marcus had earned his patch with the Iron Wolves, a chapter of one of the most notorious motorcycle clubs in the American Southwest. The leather vest hung on his broad shoulders like armor, each stitch representing a promise he had made to his brothers. But beneath that tough exterior beat a heart that knew only one true loyalty: his 18-year-old brother, Danny. Danny had been born with a congenital heart defect. For years, the condition had remained stable, manageable with medication and careful monitoring. But 3 weeks ago, everything changed. The doctors at Kern Medical Center had delivered the devastating news with clinical precision. Danny needed a specialized surgery, a procedure so complex that only a handful of surgeons in the country could perform it. The cost was staggering, $450,000, not including the months of rehabilitation that would follow. Marcus had spent the last 21 days exploring every option. He had called insurance companies, only to be met with denials and fine print that seemed designed to crush hope. He had approached banks, but his credit history told a story of struggle and survival that loan officers could not overlook. He had even considered selling everything he owned, but the trailer, his motorcycle, and his meager savings would barely cover a fraction of the amount. The morning air carried the scent of sage and diesel as Marcus lit a cigarette, drawing the smoke deep into his lungs. Inside the trailer, Danny was still sleeping, his breathing shallow and labored even in rest. The boy had always been the dreamer of the family, filling notebooks with sketches of buildings he wanted to design someday, cities he wanted to visit, lives he wanted to live. Marcus would do anything to give him that chance. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Chains, the club's vice president. "Church at noon, important." Marcus typed a quick acknowledgement and slipped the phone back into his jeans. Whatever the club needed, he would be there. The Iron Wolves had given him purpose when the world had offered him nothing, and he owed them his loyalty. But as he watched the sunrise paint his brother's window in golden light, Marcus knew that his loyalty to Danny came first. It always had. It always would. 3 hours later, Marcus walked into the Iron Wolves clubhouse, a converted warehouse on the outskirts of town. The building had seen better days, its corrugated metal walls bearing the scars of countless storms and the occasional bullet hole from disputes long since settled. But to Marcus, it was a sanctuary, a place where men who had been discarded by society could find family. The main room was already filled with leather-clad figures when Marcus arrived. He nodded to the brothers he passed, each acknowledgement carrying the weight of shared experience. There was Axel, a former army mechanic who could coax life from any engine. There was Preacher, an ex-convict who had found redemption in the club's code of honor. And there was Chains himself, a mountain of a man whose calm demeanor belied the ferocity he could unleash when protecting his own. "Rookie!" Chains called out, using the nickname Marcus had earned during his prospect year. "Take a seat. We've got business." Marcus settled into a worn leather chair as the room fell silent. At the head of the table sat Viper, the club president, a grizzled veteran whose eyes held the wisdom of decades on the road. Viper surveyed the assembled brothers with a slow, deliberate gaze before speaking. "Got word from our contacts in Los Angeles," Viper began. "There's opportunity there. Big money, legal work, security contracts for some wealthy folks who want protection they can trust. They're looking for men who can handle themselves, men who aren't afraid to stand in the gap." A murmur rippled through the room. Security work was familiar territory for the Iron Wolves. They had built a reputation for reliability and discretion, qualities that wealthy clients valued above all else. "The contact is a woman named Victoria Chen," Viper continued. "Runs a tech empire, worth more money than God from what I hear. She's hosting some kind of charity gala next month and wants our boys on the ground, paying top dollar for the best." Marcus listened with half an ear, his mind still consumed by Danny's condition. Security work paid well, but not well enough. Not nearly enough. After the meeting adjourned, Marcus lingered near the bar, nursing a beer he barely tasted. Chains approached, sliding onto the stool beside him. "You look like a man carrying the world on his shoulders," Chains observed. "Talk to me, brother." Marcus hesitated. Pride had always been his armor, a shield against the pity he despised. But Chains had earned his trust 100 times over, and the burden was becoming too heavy to bear alone. "It's Danny," Marcus said finally. "His heart. The doctors say he needs surgery, the kind that costs more than I could make in 20 lifetimes. Insurance won't cover it. Banks won't touch me. I'm running out of options, and I'm running out of time." Chains absorbed this information with the stillness of a man who had faced his own demons. When he spoke, his voice was low and steady. "How much time?" "They say 6 months, maybe less. Every day that passes, his heart gets weaker. Every day the window closes a little more." Chains nodded slowly. "The club takes care of its own, you know that. But 400 grand, that's beyond what we can pull together, even with everyone contributing." "I know," Marcus said. "That's why I haven't asked. This isn't the club's burden to carry." "Everything that burdens one of us burdens all of us," Chains replied. "That's the code. But I understand what you're saying. You need to find another way." Marcus drained his beer and set the bottle down with a heavy thud. "I just don't know what that way is." Chains was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This Victoria Chen woman, she's not just looking for security. Word is, she's looking for something else. Someone to accompany her to events, stand by her side, make the right impression. She's been burned by the trust fund types before. She wants someone real, someone who doesn't care about her money." Marcus frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that rich people live in a different world, brother. They pay for things we take for granted. Companionship, authenticity, the feeling of being seen for who they are, not what they have." Chains paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "A man who could give her that, genuinely, well, a man like that might find doors opening that he never knew existed." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You're talking about using someone, deceiving her." "I'm talking about survival," Chains said. "I'm talking about your brother dying if you don't find a way to save him. I'm not telling you to do anything wrong. I'm telling you to keep your eyes open. Sometimes the universe puts opportunities in our path. What we do with them is our choice." That night, Marcus lay awake in his narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling of the trailer. Danny's labored breathing echoed through the thin walls, each inhale a reminder of the clock that was ticking toward an outcome Marcus could not accept. Chain's words replayed in his mind like a relentless drumbeat. The idea felt wrong, manipulative, a betrayal of the values he had always held sacred. But what were values worth if they could not save the one person he loved most in the world? By the time the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, Marcus had made his decision. He would go to Los Angeles, he would meet Victoria Chen, and he would do whatever it took to save his brother's life. The choice was made. The road ahead was uncertain. But Marcus Hayes had learned long ago that the most important journeys begin with a single step into the unknown. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. Stories like this one remind us that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face the impossible for the ones we love. Subscribe now so you never miss a moment when ordinary people choose to become extraordinary. Los Angeles sprawled before Marcus like a glittering maze of dreams and desperation. The city had a way of making a man feel both infinitely small and strangely alive, as if every street corner held the promise of transformation. Marcus had arrived 3 days before the security briefing, using the time to study Victoria Chen from afar. The research had been easy enough. Victoria Chen was everywhere, on the covers of business magazines, in the society pages of newspapers, at the center of every conversation about innovation and philanthropy. At 34, she had built a technology company from nothing, a startup that had revolutionized how people connected in the digital age. Her net worth was measured in billions, a number so vast it felt more like fiction than fact. But it was the personal details that captured Marcus's attention. Victoria had lost her parents in a car accident when she was 16, an only child left to navigate the world alone. She had worked her way through college, earning scholarships through sheer determination and brilliance. The empire she had built was not inherited. It was forged through sacrifice and sleepless nights and the refusal to accept the limitations others placed upon her. There was a loneliness in her story that Marcus recognized. Behind the glamorous photos and the polished interviews, he sensed a woman who had traded everything for success, only to discover that success could not fill the empty spaces in her heart. The security briefing took place in a converted loft in the Arts District, a space that managed to feel both industrial and elegant. Marcus stood among a dozen other men, all of them carrying themselves with the quiet confidence of professionals who knew how to handle trouble. A representative from Chen Enterprises walked them through the logistics of the upcoming gala: entry points, VIP areas, communication protocols, emergency procedures. Marcus absorbed every detail, his mind cataloging the information with practiced efficiency. But his attention kept drifting to the large photograph displayed on one wall. Victoria Chen, captured in mid-laugh, her dark eyes sparkling with a joy that seemed at odds with the controlled image she projected in public. After the briefing, the men dispersed to various posts throughout the building. Marcus was assigned to the perimeter, a position that afforded him a clear view of the main entrance. He took his post with professional calm, scanning the surroundings for anything that might require attention. Hours passed in routine vigilance. The sun arced across the sky, casting long shadows through the loft's floor-to-ceiling windows. Marcus had nearly settled into the rhythm of the work when a commotion near the entrance caught his attention. A black sedan had pulled up to the curb, and several men in expensive suits were escorting a woman toward the building. Marcus recognized her immediately. Victoria Chen, dressed in a simple white blouse and tailored slacks, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Without the designer gowns and elaborate styling of her public appearances, she looked surprisingly approachable, almost ordinary. But there was nothing ordinary about the way she carried herself. Victoria walked with purpose, her posture straight, her gaze sweeping the environment with an awareness that spoke of someone who had learned to trust no one completely. As she approached the entrance, her eyes met Marcus's. It was a brief moment, barely a second, but something passed between them, a recognition that defied explanation. Then Victoria was inside, surrounded by assistants and security personnel, and Marcus was left at his post, wondering if he had imagined the connection. The gala preparation continued for the next 2 weeks. Marcus worked double shifts, his body exhausted, but his mind relentlessly focused on the goal that had brought him to this city. He watched Victoria from a distance, studying her patterns, her preferences, the subtle tells that revealed her true nature beneath the public facade. He noticed that she always thanked the catering staff by name. He observed how she lingered near the exit whenever the crowds became too overwhelming, seeking moments of solitude in the chaos. He saw the flicker of sadness that crossed her face when she thought no one was watching, a melancholy that spoke of losses never fully healed. And slowly, almost against his will, Marcus found himself caring about her well-being. Not because of her money, not because of what she could do for Danny, but because she was a human being carrying burdens that no amount of wealth could ease. The gala itself was a spectacle of elegance and excess. The venue was a restored theater in downtown Los Angeles, its Art Deco architecture providing a backdrop of vintage glamour. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across the marble floors. A live orchestra played classical arrangements that floated through the air like perfume. And everywhere, the beautiful and the powerful mingled in a dance of influence and ambition. Marcus had been stationed near the main ballroom, close enough to observe the festivities but far enough to maintain professional distance. He watched Victoria work the room, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, always smiling, always gracious. But he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. Around 10 o'clock, Victoria excused herself from a conversation with a senator and slipped through a side door. Marcus hesitated for only a moment before following. His instincts told him something was wrong, and he had learned long ago to trust his instincts. He found her on a small balcony overlooking the city, the cool night air stirring the loose strands of her hair. She was leaning against the railing, her eyes fixed on the distant lights, her expression one of profound exhaustion. "Miss Chen," Marcus said quietly, announcing his presence. "Is everything all right?" Victoria turned, startled but not frightened. Recognition flickered in her eyes as she identified him as one of her security team. "I remember you," she said, her voice softer than he expected. "You were at the entrance on my first visit. You have kind eyes." Marcus felt heat rise to his cheeks, a reaction he had not experienced in years. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am." "Please don't call me that," Victoria said with a slight smile. "It makes me feel like my grandmother. Victoria is fine." "Victoria," Marcus repeated, the name feeling strange and wonderful on his tongue. They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the gala muffled by the closed door behind them. Victoria turned back to the city lights, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she asked. "Like you're playing a role that someone else wrote for you, and no matter how well you perform, it never feels quite real?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I think everyone feels that way sometimes. The trick is figuring out which parts are the act and which parts are really you." Victoria glanced at him, curiosity replacing some of the fatigue in her eyes. "That's a surprisingly philosophical answer for a security guard." "Even security guards think about life sometimes," Marcus replied with a hint of a smile, "usually during the quiet shifts." Victoria laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "Fair enough. What's your name?" "Marcus. Marcus Hayes." "Well, Marcus Hayes, thank you for checking on me. I needed a moment away from all of that." She gestured toward the door, toward the glittering world that awaited her return. "I understand," Marcus said. "Sometimes the most crowded rooms are the loneliest places." Victoria studied him with renewed interest. "You're not what I expected from the security company." "What did you expect?" "Muscles and monosyllables, the strong, silent type who looks intimidating but can't string two sentences together." She paused, tilting her head slightly. "You're different." Marcus shrugged. "I've had a different kind of life." "Tell me about it, please." Victoria moved to a small bench on the balcony and sat down, patting the space beside her. "The gala can wait a few more minutes. Right now, I just want to talk to someone real." Marcus hesitated. This was the opportunity Chains had predicted, the door that had opened unexpectedly. But as he looked at Victoria with her tired eyes and genuine smile, he felt something shift inside him. She was not a target to be manipulated. She was a person seeking connection, just like everyone else. He sat beside her and began to talk, not about his plans or his brother's condition, but about himself, about growing up in the foster system, bouncing between homes that ranged from indifferent to actively harmful, about finding the motorcycle club and discovering for the first time what it meant to belong somewhere, about Danny, the brother who had been his anchor through every storm. Victoria listened without interruption, her attention unwavering. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "We're more alike than I would have guessed," she said finally. "Both of us raised by circumstance rather than choice. Both of us fighting for something beyond ourselves." "What are you fighting for?" Marcus asked. Victoria's expression grew distant. "For my parents' dream. They wanted to change the world, to make technology a tool for connection rather than isolation. I've tried to honor that vision, but sometimes I wonder if I've lost myself along the way." "Maybe you don't have to choose," Marcus suggested. "Maybe honoring them and finding yourself can be the same journey." Victoria smiled, and this time the warmth reached her eyes. "I like the way you think, Marcus Hayes. Would you consider staying on past this event? I could use someone like you around. Someone who sees through all the performance." Marcus felt his heart quicken. This was more than he had dared hope for. "I'd like that," he said. "I'd like that very much." They sat together as the night deepened, two strangers who had found an unexpected kinship in the midst of chaos. And though Marcus knew that challenges lay ahead, in that moment he allowed himself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, the universe was offering him a path he had never imagined. The weeks that followed felt like a dream from which Marcus feared waking. Victoria had hired him as her personal security consultant, a position that kept him close to her side through the endless rounds of meetings, interviews, and public appearances that defined her life. But their relationship had quickly grown beyond professional boundaries. It began with small gestures. Victoria would save him a seat at dinner, even when protocol suggested he should stand apart. She would text him late at night, sharing thoughts she was too cautious to voice in public. She would catch his eye across crowded rooms, her smile a private signal that reminded him he was seen. Marcus found himself opening up in ways he had never anticipated. He told her about his childhood, about the homes where he had been treated like a burden rather than a person. He told her about the nights he had spent on the streets, before the motorcycle club had found him and given him purpose. He told her about his fears, his regrets, the parts of himself he had tried to leave buried in the past. And Victoria listened, not with pity, but with understanding. She saw him not as a project to be fixed, but as a person to be known. "You carry so much," she told him one evening, as they walked together through the garden of her estate. "The weight of everyone else's expectations, the responsibility for your brother, the code of your club. When do you ever just exist? Without all of that pressing down on you?" Marcus considered the question. "I don't know if I remember how. Maybe I never learned." Victoria stopped walking and turned to face him. The moonlight caught her features, illuminating the gentle curves of her face. "I want you to learn," she said, "with me. I want to know who Marcus Hayes is when he's not fighting someone else's battle." The words hit him like a wave, washing away some of the armor he had built around his heart. He wanted to tell her everything, to confess the real reason he had sought this position, to lay bare the desperate calculation that had brought him into her life. But the words stuck in his throat, held captive by the fear of what honesty might cost. Instead, he reached out and took her hand. "I'm trying," he said. "That's the most I can promise." Victoria squeezed his fingers gently. "That's enough. For now, that's enough." Their relationship deepened with each passing day. Victoria introduced him to her world, a realm of private jets and penthouse suites and conversations that shaped the direction of industries. Marcus felt like a visitor in a foreign country, constantly translating between the language he knew and the one he was learning. But Victoria never made him feel small. She included him in discussions, valued his perspective, treated him as an equal rather than an accessory. And slowly, Marcus began to believe that perhaps he did belong in her world, that perhaps the gap between them was not as vast as he had feared. Meanwhile, Danny's condition continued to weigh on Marcus's mind like an anchor. He had managed to secure a partial advance on his salary, using the money to cover some of Danny's medical expenses. But the surgery remained out of reach, a financial mountain that no amount of climbing seemed to diminish. He called Danny every night, the connection scratchy but precious. Danny's voice had grown weaker, his breathing more labored, but his spirit remained unbroken. He asked about Marcus's work, about the famous people he had met, about the adventures he was having in the big city. And Marcus told him stories, painting pictures of a life that was equal parts truth and aspiration. "You sound happy," Danny observed one night, his voice barely above a whisper. "Different than before. What changed?" Marcus thought about Victoria, about the way she made him feel when they were together. "I met someone," he admitted. "Someone who makes me want to be better than I am." Danny was silent for a moment. Then, "Does she know about me?" "She knows I have a brother I love more than anything in the world. She knows I'd do anything to keep him safe." "But does she know everything? About why you're there?" Marcus closed his eyes. Danny had always been perceptive, able to see through the walls Marcus built around his true intentions. "Not everything. Not yet." "You should tell her," Danny said. "If she's special, She deserves the truth. And if she can't accept the truth, then maybe she's not as special as you think. The words stayed with Marcus long after the call ended. Danny was right. Victoria deserved honesty. But how could he explain that his presence in her life had begun as a calculated gamble, a desperate bid to access resources that might save his brother? How could he confess that the connection they had built was rooted, at least initially, in deception? The internal struggle consumed him, creating a tension that even Victoria noticed. She asked him several times what was wrong, and each time he deflected, citing stress from the job or concern about his brother. But the lies felt heavier with each repetition, the guilt growing like a tumor in his chest. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. Victoria had organized a private fundraiser at her estate, an intimate gathering of her closest friends and most trusted advisors. Marcus was there as both security and companion, occupying the strange dual role that had become his new normal. During the evening, Victoria made an announcement that silenced the room. She was launching a new charitable foundation dedicated to providing medical care for children who could not afford treatment. The fund would be seeded with $50 million from her personal fortune, with matching contributions expected from the guests in attendance. "I believe that no child should suffer because of circumstance," Victoria said, her voice carrying the conviction of personal experience. "No parent should have to choose between their child's life and their family's financial survival. This foundation will change that. We will find the children who need us most and give them a fighting chance." Marcus felt the world tilt beneath his feet. This was exactly what Danny needed. This was the miracle he had been seeking. And Victoria had created it not for him, not because of any manipulation on his part, but because she genuinely wanted to help. After the announcement, the guests crowded around Victoria, offering congratulations and pledging their support. Marcus stood apart, his mind racing with possibilities and complications. He needed to tell her about Danny. He needed to confess the truth of how he had come into her life. He needed to trust that the connection they had built was strong enough to survive the revelation. He waited until the last guest had departed, until the estate had grown quiet and the staff had retreated to their quarters. Victoria found him in the garden, standing in the same spot where she had first asked him to open up. "Something's bothering you," she said, settling onto the bench beside him. "You've been somewhere else all evening. Talk to me." Marcus took a deep breath. The moment of truth had arrived. "I need to tell you something," he began. "Something I should have told you a long time ago, and I need you to listen to all of it before you respond." Victoria's expression grew serious, but she nodded. "I'm listening." And so Marcus told her everything, about Danny's condition, about the cost of the surgery that could save his life, about Chaines's suggestion that he seek opportunities among the wealthy, about his initial intention to get close to her for financial reasons, about the way that intention had evolved into something real, something true, something he had never expected. By the time he finished, tears were streaming down his face. He had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable, so completely at the mercy of another person's judgment. Victoria was silent for what felt like hours. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but filled with emotion. "I need you to understand something, Marcus. I have spent my entire adult life surrounded by people who wanted something from me. Money, access, influence. I learned to build walls so high that no one could see the real me, because the real me was never what they were after." Marcus felt his heart sink. This was it. This was the moment when everything he had built would crumble. "When I met you," Victoria continued, "I thought I was hiring security. But what I found was a person who made me feel seen. Not Victoria Chen, the billionaire. Not the CEO or the philanthropist or the face on the magazine covers, just me. And that feeling was so rare, so precious, that I allowed myself to hope." She turned to face him, her dark eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You came into my life with an agenda. I understand that. But you stayed because of something else. I saw it happening, Marcus. I saw you choosing me, not my resources, not what I could provide, but me. And that choice, that gradual shift from calculation to care, that's worth more than any confession could take away. Marcus stared at her, scarcely daring to breathe. "You're not angry?" "I'm hurt," Victoria admitted. "I won't pretend otherwise. But I'm also grateful. Grateful that you told me the truth. Grateful that you trusted me enough to be vulnerable. And grateful that what we have is real, even if it started from something complicated." She reached out and took his hand, the same gesture he had offered her on the balcony months ago. "Your brother needs help," she said, "and I have the resources to provide it. That would be true regardless of what happened between us. Danny will get his surgery. I'll make sure of it personally." Marcus felt something break inside him, a dam of tension and fear that had been building for months. He pulled Victoria into his arms and held her, his body shaking with sobs of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Victoria held him until the tears subsided, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of his emotions. "We're going to figure this out together," she promised. "All of it. Your brother, your club, your future. We're in this together now." And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus allowed himself to believe that everything might actually be okay. If this story has touched your heart, pause right now and leave a comment saying, "True love is honest, even when honesty is hard." Let us know you are here, feeling this moment with us. Your words mean everything. The surgery was scheduled for the third week of October, 3 months after Marcus's confession on the moonlit garden bench. Victoria had personally contacted the best pediatric cardiac surgeon in the country, a physician at Stanford Medical Center whose expertise was legendary in the field. She had covered every expense, from the initial consultations to the state-of-the-art facility where Danny would undergo the procedure. Marcus flew back to Bakersfield to prepare his brother for the journey. Danny had grown noticeably weaker since their last meeting in person, his once vibrant energy diminished by the steady progression of his condition. But when Marcus walked through the door of the trailer, Danny's face lit up with a smile that erased all the worry lines and medical charts. "You actually did it," Danny said, his voice thin but full of wonder. "You found a way." Marcus sat on the edge of Danny's bed and took his brother's hand. The fingers were cold, the grip weaker than it should have been, but the spirit behind those eyes remained unbroken. "I had help," Marcus admitted. "A lot of help. From someone pretty special." "The woman you told me about? The one who makes you want to be better?" "Yeah, her name is Victoria, and she's more than I could have ever imagined." Danny squeezed his hand. "I want to meet her. Before the surgery. I want to see the person who convinced my stubborn brother to believe in something beyond himself," Marcus promised. And 2 days later, when Victoria arrived in Bakersfield with a medical transport team and enough equipment to rival a small hospital, Danny got his wish. The meeting was quiet, intimate, stripped of all the glamour that typically surrounded Victoria's public appearances. She sat beside Danny's bed in a simple sweater and jeans, listening as he described his dreams of becoming an architect, his favorite books, the designs he had sketched during endless hours of rest. Victoria was captivated. She asked questions about his work, admired the drawings that covered the trailer walls, and shared stories of her own struggles during the early years of building her company. By the time the medical team announced they were ready for transport, a genuine friendship had formed between them. "Your brother is extraordinary," Victoria told Marcus as they walked to the waiting vehicle. "That spark in his eyes even now, even while facing something so frightening, it's remarkable." "He's always been the strong one," Marcus said. "I just pretend." Victoria smiled and kissed his cheek. "Pretending is just practicing for real, and you've had plenty of practice." The transport to Stanford was smooth, the medical team efficient and gentle. Danny was settled into a private room with views of the California hills, his walls quickly decorated with the Get Well cards that had begun arriving from the motorcycle club. The Iron Wolves had taken up a collection, contributing what they could and promising to ride up for the surgery. Brotherhood, they reminded Marcus, knew no distance. The night before the operation, Marcus sat alone with Danny. The room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of the monitoring equipment, the mechanical sounds that had become the soundtrack of their lives. "Are you scared?" Marcus asked. Danny considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "A little, but mostly I'm grateful. 6 months ago, I thought this was the end. I was trying to figure out how to say goodbye, how to make peace with everything I would never get to do. And now I have hope. Real hope." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You're going to come through this. The doctors are the best in the world. Victoria made sure of that." "I know," Danny said. "But even if I didn't, even if this was the end, I'd be okay. Because I got to see you become the person you were always meant to be. I got to watch my brother fall in love, learn to trust, learn to let people in. That's worth everything, Marcus. That's the best ending I could ask for." Marcus blinked back tears. "This isn't an ending. This is a beginning. You're going to walk out of here and design buildings that change skylines. You're going to travel to every city you ever dreamed about. You're going to live the life you deserve." Danny smiled, the expression peaceful and content. "Promise me something?" "Anything. Promise me you'll hold on to what you found with Victoria. Don't let fear push you back into the old patterns. You deserve love, Marcus. You deserve happiness. Promise me you'll fight for it." Marcus took his brother's hand and held on tight. "I promise." The surgery lasted 11 hours. Marcus spent every minute of it in the waiting room, surrounded by Victoria and a contingent of iron wolves who had ridden through the night to be there. The men sat in their leather vests and worn boots, an unlikely assembly in the sterile hospital environment, but their presence was exactly what Marcus needed. Victoria sat beside him, her hand never leaving his. She had canceled a week of meetings to be there, rearranging her empire with a few phone calls so she could remain by his side. The gesture spoke louder than any words. When the surgeon finally emerged, his face was tired but relieved. "The procedure was successful," he announced. "There were some complications, but we addressed them. Danny is in recovery now. He's going to need extensive rehabilitation, but the prognosis is excellent. He's going to make it." Marcus felt the strength leave his legs. If Victoria hadn't been there to catch him, he would have collapsed. Instead, she held him up, her arms wrapped around him as the iron wolves erupted in cheers that echoed through the hospital corridors. "He made it," Marcus whispered. "He actually made it." Victoria pressed her forehead to his. "He made it. And now we move forward together. All of us." The recovery was slow but steady. Danny spent 6 weeks in the hospital, followed by 3 months at a specialized rehabilitation center that Victoria had personally vetted. Marcus visited every day that his schedule allowed, watching his brother grow stronger, regain weight, begin to move with something approaching his old energy. During those months, Marcus's relationship with Victoria deepened in ways he had never anticipated. They talked about the future, about what life might look like once Danny was fully recovered. Victoria spoke of expanding her foundation to include more cases like Danny's, to reach families across the country who faced similar impossible choices. And she spoke of wanting Marcus by her side, not as a security consultant or a hired companion, but as a partner in the truest sense of the word. "I never expected this," she told him one evening, as they sat together in the rehabilitation center's garden. "When I hired that security team, I was looking for protection from the outside world. I wasn't looking for someone to breach my inner walls, but you did. You got through every defense I ever built. And somehow, instead of feeling vulnerable, I feel stronger. I feel whole." Marcus looked at the woman beside him, the billionaire who had become his best friend, his confidant, his love. "I came into your life with secrets and agendas. I don't know why you forgave that." "Because the secrets led to truth," Victoria said. "And the agendas evolved into authentic care. That's all any of us can hope for, Marcus. That our flawed beginnings can still lead to beautiful endings." She leaned against his shoulder, and together they watched the sun set over the California hills, painting the sky in the same amber and gold that had illuminated Marcus's trailer on the morning this all began. The road had been winding and uncertain. The obstacles had seemed insurmountable, but somehow, Through determination and sacrifice and the unexpected grace of human connection, they had found their way through. And the journey was only beginning. Danny was released from the rehabilitation center on a crisp December morning, his steps slow but steady as he walked through the doors into the waiting arms of his brother. Marcus held him close, careful not to squeeze too hard against the healing chest, but desperate to feel the living warmth of the person who had been saved against all odds. "Look at you," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Walking on your own 2 feet. I thought I might never see this day." Danny grinned, the expression carrying a shadow of the mischief that had always defined him. "You can't get rid of me that easily. Besides, someone has to keep you out of trouble." Victoria stood a few steps behind, giving the brothers their moment. When Danny finally turned to her, he crossed the remaining distance and wrapped his arms around her with surprising strength. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." Victoria held him gently. "Thank me by living the fullest life you can imagine. That's all I ask." The drive back to Bakersfield was different than every journey Marcus had made before. The landscape was the same. The dusty plains, the scattered farmhouses, the endless stretch of highway cutting through the California interior. But the weight that had pressed on Marcus's chest for so long had finally lifted. For the first time in years, the future felt like something to anticipate rather than fear. They had agreed that Danny would stay in Los Angeles for the foreseeable future. Victoria had arranged for him to enroll in an architectural program at one of the city's premier universities, a chance to pursue the dreams he had sketched in that cramped trailer during the darkest days of his illness. She had also set up a small apartment for him near campus, funded through her foundation so he could focus on his studies without financial worry. "I still can't believe this is real," Danny said, looking out the window at the passing scenery. "A year ago I was planning my funeral. Now I'm planning a career." "Life has a way of surprising us," Victoria observed from the driver's seat. "Sometimes the plots we think we're living turn out to be completely different stories." Marcus sat in the back, watching the 2 most important people in his world share the front seat. The sight filled him with a warmth that went beyond gratitude. It felt like family, real family, the kind he had always longed for but never believed he would find. The Iron Wolves had organized a celebration for Danny's return. They had transformed their weathered clubhouse into something almost festive, with banners and streamers and a massive cake bearing the words, "Welcome back, kid." The brothers lined up to shake Danny's hand, each one offering words of welcome and congratulations. Chains pulled Marcus aside during the festivities, his expression thoughtful. "You did it, brother," he said. "You found a way through the impossible. I've seen men break under less pressure than you carried. But you kept going. You kept fighting. That's what separates the survivors from the rest." Marcus nodded, the weight of the compliment settling into his chest. "I couldn't have done it without the club, without you. You gave me the push I needed when I was ready to give up." Chains clapped him on the shoulder. "That's what brothers are for. But I've got to ask, what now? Your life has changed in ways none of us could have predicted. Where do you go from here?" It was a question Marcus had been pondering for weeks. His relationship with Victoria had grown into something serious, something that hinted at permanence. But he was still an iron wolf, bound by a code that had given him identity and purpose when he had nothing else. Could he honor both commitments? Could he live in both worlds? "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted. "I'm still figuring it out." "Whatever you decide," Chain said, "the club will support you. You've earned that. You've earned the right to choose your own path." The words stayed with Marcus as the celebration continued into the night. He watched his brothers laugh and drink and tell stories, the camaraderie that had sustained him through the hardest years of his life still strong and real. And he watched Victoria, moving among the bikers with an ease that surprised him, genuinely interested in their stories, genuinely comfortable in their rough-hewn company. She caught his eye across the room and smiled, the expression carrying a private message that only he could read. In that smile, he saw acceptance, encouragement, love. She was not asking him to choose between his worlds. She was willing to inhabit both with him, to find a balance that honored who he had been and who he was becoming. Later, when the party had wound down and most of the brothers had departed, Marcus and Victoria walked together through the cool night air. The stars were sharp and bright overhead, the kind of sky that only exists far from city lights. "What are you thinking?" Victoria asked, slipping her hand into his. "I'm thinking that a year ago, I couldn't have imagined any of this. The surgery, the recovery, you. I was so focused on surviving that I forgot to think about actually living. And now?" Marcus stopped and turned to face her. "Now I'm ready to start living. Really living, with Danny healthy, with the club behind me, with you beside me. For the first time, I can see a future that's worth fighting for." Victoria reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "I love you, Marcus Hayes. Not the security guard I hired, not the biker with the mysterious past. I love you, the complicated, imperfect, beautiful person you actually are." Marcus felt something release inside him, a final knot of doubt that had been holding him back. "I love you too. I think I have since that first night on the balcony, when you asked if I ever felt like I was living someone else's life." "And do you still feel that way?" He shook his head. "No. For the first time, I feel like I'm living my own life, and I want to keep living it with you." Victoria rose on her toes and kissed him, a gentle press of lips that carried the promise of all the years to come. When they parted, her eyes were bright with tears. "Then that's what we'll do," she said. "Together." They stood beneath the stars, two people from different worlds who had found each other against all odds. The road ahead would have challenges. Marcus knew that. Nothing worth having came without struggle. But for the first time, he believed that the struggles could be faced, that the challenges could be overcome, that the life he had always dreamed of was finally within reach. And in the distance, the sound of engines rumbled, the iron wolves making their way home. The brotherhood that had saved him was still with him, still supporting him, still reminding him that he was never truly alone. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the garden of Victoria's estate, the same garden where he had confessed his secrets and received her forgiveness. But today, the garden had been transformed into something magical. An arch of white roses framed the central pathway, chairs lined either side of the lawn, and friends and family had gathered to witness a moment that had seemed impossible not so long ago. Danny stood beside Marcus as best man, his suit fitting perfectly over a chest that now bore only fading scars from the surgery that had saved his life. He had completed his first semester of architectural school with honors, his designs earning praise from professors who saw a rare talent in his work. The future that had once seemed lost was now unfolding with breathtaking possibility. The Iron Wolves occupied one entire section of seating, their leather vests cleaned and pressed for the occasion. Chains, Axel, Preacher, and the others sat with an unusual solemnity, understanding that they were witnessing more than a wedding. They were witnessing the transformation of one of their own, a brother who had found a different kind of family without abandoning the one that had made him. Viper had given his blessing personally, acknowledging that Marcus's loyalty to the club remained intact even as his life expanded beyond its traditional boundaries. "Brotherhood doesn't mean staying the same forever," he had told Marcus. "It means supporting each other through change. And any brother who can find love like that, build a life like that, that's something we should celebrate, not mourn." Victoria appeared at the end of the aisle, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. She wore a simple white dress that caught the afternoon light like silk and sunshine, her dark hair flowing freely over her shoulders. But it was her smile that captured him, the same radiant expression he had glimpsed on that balcony a year ago, now directed entirely at him. She walked toward him slowly, savoring each step, her eyes never leaving his. Behind her, the Pacific Ocean sparkled in the distance, a boundless horizon that seemed to stretch toward forever. And when she finally stood before him, taking his hands in hers, Marcus felt the final pieces of his life click into place. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They had written their own vows, personal promises that acknowledged their unconventional journey, and the obstacles they had overcome. "Marcus," Victoria began, her voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. "When I first met you, I was hiding behind walls I thought would keep me safe. I had convinced myself that wealth and success could fill the empty spaces in my heart. But you showed me something different. You showed me that true connection requires vulnerability, that strength is found in honesty, that love grows from the courage to be seen. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you. I choose you, today and every day after." Marcus took a breath, steadying himself against the wave of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "Victoria," he said, "I came into your life with secrets I was afraid to share. I carried burdens I thought I had to carry alone. But you taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You taught me that the past doesn't have to define the future, and you showed me that love, real love, is about accepting someone completely, the shadows as well as the light. You gave me my brother's life, but more than that, you gave me my own. I choose you. I will always choose you." The officiant pronounced them married, and as Marcus kissed his bride, the gathered witnesses erupted in applause. The iron wolves revved their engines in a thunderous salute, the sound echoing across the estate like a blessing from the road itself. The reception was a blend of worlds that, by all logic, should never have mixed. Billionaires mingling with bikers, tech executives sharing drinks with men who had never owned a computer. But Victoria had orchestrated the event with her characteristic attention to detail, ensuring that everyone felt welcome, that every guest understood they were part of something larger than themselves. Danny gave a toast that had half the room in tears and the other half laughing. "My brother spent most of his life trying to protect me," Danny said, raising his glass toward Marcus and Victoria. "He thought that meant keeping me safe from the world. But what he finally learned is that protection isn't about building walls, it's about opening doors. Victoria, you opened doors he didn't even know existed, and because of that, both of us got to walk through into lives we never imagined. To the couple who proved that love isn't just about finding someone, it's about becoming someone brave enough to let another person see who you really are." The applause that followed was warm and genuine, a testament to the truth in Danny's words. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself standing alone at the edge of the garden, watching the celebration unfold. Victoria was dancing with one of the iron wolves, her laughter carrying across the lawn like music. Danny was deep in conversation with a group of tech executives, his architectural sketches spread across a table as he explained his vision for sustainable design. The worlds that Marcus had once thought irreconcilable were blending together with surprising grace. Chains appeared beside him, a bottle of beer in each hand. He offered one to Marcus, and they clinked bottles in silent acknowledgement. "Never thought I'd see the day," Chains admitted. "A brother tying the knot with a billionaire, at a party where half the guests are Fortune 500 and the other half have rap sheets. But here we are." Marcus smiled. "Here we are. You know what this means, right? Things change now. They have to." "I know," Marcus said. "But change doesn't mean abandoning what matters. It means finding new ways to honor it." Chains considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I can live with that. The club can live with that, as long as you remember where you came from." "I could never forget," Marcus said. "The club saved me when I had nothing. That's not something a person forgets." They stood in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The sounds of celebration continued behind them, but in this moment, it was just two brothers sharing the peace of a journey completed. Victoria found them later, slipping her arm through Marcus's and leaning her head against his shoulder. "There you are," she said. "I was wondering if you'd gotten cold feet." "Not a chance," Marcus replied. "I was just taking it all in, trying to remember how we got here." Victoria looked out at the gathered guests, at the impossible fusion of worlds that had become their reality. "We got here by choosing each other," she said, "over and over, even when it was hard, even when it didn't make sense. That's what love is, isn't it? A series of choices that add up to a life." Marcus kissed the top of her head. I like that definition. I thought you might. They returned to the party together, to the music and the laughter and the celebration that had been built from pain and determination and hope. And when the night finally ended, when the last guest had departed and the garden had grown quiet, Marcus stood with his wife on the balcony of their room, looking out at the ocean that stretched toward horizons they would explore together. "Thank you," he said quietly. Victoria turned to look at him, curiosity in her eyes. "For what?" "For believing that a man who came into your life under false pretenses could become someone worth loving, for seeing past the secrets to the person underneath, for giving my brother a future, and giving me a life I never thought I'd have." Victoria reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his cheek. "You gave yourself those things," she said. "I just helped you see what was already there. The courage, the loyalty, the capacity for love. All I did was provide a mirror." Marcus pulled her close, holding her as the ocean waves crashed against the shore below. The journey that had begun with desperation had led to this moment, standing in the arms of the woman he loved, with his brother healthy and thriving, with a future that sparkled with possibility. The road had been long and winding. There had been moments when he thought the burden was too heavy to carry, when the obstacles seemed insurmountable, when hope felt like a luxury he could not afford. But he had kept going. He had kept fighting. And in the end, he had found something worth more than any amount of money: a family, a real family, built not from blood alone, but from choice and sacrifice and love. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had watched over him during the darkest nights in that cramped trailer in Bakersfield. But now they seemed different. Now they seemed like promises, each one a reminder that the universe rewards those who refuse to surrender to circumstance. And as Marcus held his wife beneath the canopy of that infinite sky, he understood finally what it meant to be home. If you watched this far, it is because this story touched your heart. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until the end," so we can get to know you and know who really connects with the stories on this channel. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to believe that love and sacrifice can still change everything. And if you are not subscribed yet, join our family now. New stories of courage, redemption, and the power of human connection are coming every week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing in stories that matter. Until next time, remember, every journey begins with a single step into the unknown. And sometimes, that step leads to places more beautiful than anything we could have imagined. Marcus Hayes started with nothing but desperation and love for his brother. He took a chance that could have destroyed everything, but instead, he found something extraordinary. A woman who saw through his walls, a brotherhood that supported his journey, and a future that proved that the human heart is capable of miracles. A rookie Hell's Angel dated a rich businesswoman to pay his brother's surgery. And what happened next shocked everyone. Because love, real love, has a way of transforming even the most broken stories into something beautiful. This is not just a story. This is proof that hope is always worth fighting for.